I think it's sick care and health care. If I'm sick, I want to go to the best hospital I can possibly find. But most people are not sick. Where do you go if you're trying to not get sick? That is like health care, in my opinion. We want to teach people how to be healthy and how to stay healthy. It is two adjacent systems, but you're starting to see high-level legit providers in this other world that are starting to get frustrated because they're seeing these problems that they can't really resolve. They can put a Band-Aid on it, but eventually it creates the same problem over and over again. And that can be really challenging for them.
Danny Matta.
Danny Matta.
Danny Matta is an entrepreneur and founder of PT Biz,
which helps physical therapists to not only start their own practice, but start it in a way that allows them to scale.
Danny has built multiple seven-figure businesses.
Host of the PT Entrepreneur Podcast, which is one of the most successful physical therapy podcasts on the planet.
I mean, if you decided that you were this is like what you were doing for your life, like, right. Was it a difficult decision, or was it just like, no way, I see the future, I'm ready to do this? What was that transition like for you?
No, I don't think it was easy. It's...
Danny Matta, welcome to the Ready State Podcast.
Thanks for having me. So excited to chat with y'all.
Seriously.
This is very long overdue. And finally, I just want to say, Danny, just for everyone knows, we've known Danny for a long, long time. Danny and I were basically teenage punks together, walking shirtless in the beach in Hawaii when we realized we were married to the same woman, had the same aspirations. You have become a phenom. I'm still stuck digging a ditch. I can't believe that you finally have amounted to something to end up on the Ready State Podcast. You have been such an integral part and partner of my thinking and development as a coach and as a practitioner and as a friend for over a decade.
Well,
forever. So I'm just really excited to introduce everyone to what you're doing and how you're overturning some serious carts.
And just on that note, maybe you could just talk a little bit about your origin story and your Kelly and Danny origin story.
And we'll set it up, everyone, to know what you do, but give us a high level of how you became Danny Matta in this current moment. Like, what is your profession? And then go from there.
Yeah,
Let's give some context.
Currently, I primarily help cash and hybrid-based physical therapy clinics, really start, grow, and scale, and be able to create a patient treatment model that works for the provider to not be burnt out, but also create a really big impact for the patients that they see as well. And I started doing that inadvertently because I went to PT school in the Army, of all places, where they taught me nothing about business because I wanted to be an Army physical therapist as a career. That was my goal. So I go through the Army's, Baylor program. I get my degree. I end up, being fortunate enough to get stationed out in Hawaii at Schofield Barracks and be attached to the 25th Infantry Division for a few years. And we got connected. And Julia, I don't know if you remember this too well or not, but I cold called the gym, and you were in this Connex box where you guys had, equipment and shirts, and you picked up the phone, when I called randomly. Because I was interested in learning more about like the approach that you guys were teaching, mainly on YouTube, where I'd seen some of Kelly's stuff, and I was like, I got to start doing this with my soldiers. So I called the gym number, and you actually like answered, and come to find out, like, that phone line was like rigged from the sports basement or whatever, and like no one really ever answered it, and so just luckily you picked up, and I kind of explained what I was trying to do, and he said like, hey, you can come and hang if you want. Like, Kelly's finishing writing Supple Leopard, so he's not going to be around. And I was like, cool, I'll be there. And, so I flew in for a week. I spent a week with Angel and Roop and Diane and Carl, and like just learned so much in the week. And it I would say in a lot of ways, it sort of reframed how I was working with my soldiers. In particular, the ability to teach them how to take care of themselves, doing things that mimicked like hands-on techniques was a game changer, because there's only one of me for 3,500 of them. So, I started to...
Wait, say that again. One of you.
One physical therapist for 3,500
Why does the system struggle? Can you tell me?
I know it's an impossible job, right? And it's but what made it better was being able to be like proactive with, teaching people how to move better and take care of themselves, and just like we call it like musculoskeletal first aid, like triage themselves as well, because there's just no way I could treat all the injuries. And I started having a lot of success with it. And when you came out, you were teaching in Hawaii anyway. You had offered like, hey, I'll come in a day early and work with the Brigade. And it wasn't hard for me to get buy-in on that. There were so many people that were super into what you were talking about. So that was fun. I got to hang out, for a couple of days. really see what you were doing and dive into it. But honestly, I just was like very interested in becoming a good clinician. Like that was really all I wanted to do, and had no idea that I could do that outside of the military.
Let me stop you. Why would you? I remember you were very progressive, and the work you were doing, the teaching, the courses you were putting together around running injuries. I mean, it was one of the first times where I was like, oh, look at this. The Army has clinicians who are independent thinking. Why would you leave that job, Danny?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question, because if they would have left me in in a brigade position where I was in, I might not have. I really enjoyed the autonomy, but when we met, you had mentioned that, your team was growing and we were going to have other people teaching, and that it might be a fit for me to, come on and help with that. And
let me correct the record here. It was not. It might be a fit.
yeah,
We can spot talent from 1,000 yards away.
Before you go on with that thought, two things. First of all, I totally remember you calling and I remember you coming.
oh, nice.
Yeah, I remember all that. And then two, could you just tell everyone who's not a military person, like what's the difference between being a brigade physical therapist and then whatever it was that they moved you into being?
Yeah. So traditionally in the military, there's a few different jobs you can have as a physical therapist. A lot of people are in what are called like troop medical clinics, which you can think of as like satellite clinics to a hospital, or they're in an actual hospital. And there's, they're seeing people that are coming for different injuries they have. Maybe you're seeing retirees. And the job that I had it was very early on. They started putting a physical therapist into a brigade, which is 3,000 to 4,000 people, to help with treating injuries. And you're sort of like the in-house person that does that, right? And so that's the big difference, is like they kind of put you in there and they let me just do my thing, which was awesome. Like I actually like that a lot. I think a lot of people struggle with that because they like the structure and they want to know what their schedule is going to look like, and they don't know what else to do or whatever. I actually really enjoyed it. And but when I left Schofield Barracks, I went to Fort Benning, which is where the airborne school is, and I got attached to the clinic that is attached to the airborne school, which I thought, this is going to be awesome. Like I'm going to see all these cool injuries. And what happened was, all I was seeing was, high volume. I was seeing 20 plus people a day. Sick calls. Sometimes we would have sick calls where if you're hurt, instead of scheduling an appointment, you come during set hours. So it would be between like 6 and 8 o'clock. You could come in and we would see sometimes 30 people in 2 hours. And most of it was like, you sprained your ankle, training for airborne school. You hurt your knee running at airborne school. It was the same stuff over and over again. It was very high volume, and I couldn't actually like use my skill set in any way. I was mainly
you can't get ahead of any of those problems.
I mean, how do you see 30 people in 2 hours?
It's very hard.
2 sentences with them.
You group them up. I'm like, raise your hand if your ankle hurts, go over here. Raise your hand if your knee hurts, go over here. Like, and then you have to write the notes for that, which is a huge pain in the ass, right? So like it really burned me out quite a lot. And the other thing too is, for the Ready Safer at the time, Mobility WOD, y'all had these really cool contracts with military. And as an active duty military individual, I could not actually work with the military and charge them to do those courses if I'm still active duty. You can't do it. So, you either have to separate and come back as a consultant, or you have to say, no, I'm going to stay in and I'm going to try to make these changes internally, which is a very hard thing to do.
I love it. So somehow we roped you in to teaching courses with us.
You should see the smutty photos.
The context.
Obviously, huge leverage.
I look back on this as a phase of fondness. We've talked about this with a few other guests who are in the CrossFit space or sort of in the like general fitness space, that I felt like there was this heyday of education.
Oh yeah.
And we were like the tip of the spear of that. And it was this period between, let's say, like 2012 and 2018, where in the sort of health, fitness, wellness, physical therapy, chiro, massage, I don't know. I don't know how to expand that, but there was this massive interest in learning and going to these in-person courses. And so we had this big market for people who wanted to spend their weekend with us learning about movement and mobility and mechanics. And then it was interesting because it kind of died off. Actually, a lot of people think it's the pandemic, but it started to actually sort of die off. And I'm not sure if it was because everybody, up until that point before these courses started, it was like the dark ages. Like I always like to point out that Kelly would teach his original courses and like point to people like, this is your quad.
Yeah.
And people started to become more and more and more sophisticated. I don't know what changed, but
Internet.
it was this really that maybe the internet, maybe people just felt like they could get free information on the internet. I don't know what changed, but it was this little period that you were definitely in with us. And I look back with fondly because we were just, had people traveling all over the country teaching, and people were so excited to come for the weekend and learn. And it was a phenomenon.
It was. And it was so fun. Like, that's the other thing is it's really fun to go and teach when people really care what you're talking about, to learn what you're talking about, are like really interested in it. And you see like the light bulb moments that somebody has when you talk about, whatever the concept is. And we would get people that were individuals. They're just there. I mean, I would have people come in on crutches post-operatively, like, they're like a week out from a knee surgery and they're crutching into my course, and I'm like, I don't know if you're in the right spot. So just like, don't do anything too intense. And then you'd have people that were like the most elite athletes on the planet that would show up, and anywhere in between. And it was so fun to be able to go around and teach, but also to meet all these other people and to teach with really smart people, like the people that you guys picked to actually, work with the mobility wad. Like, they're some of the smartest people I've ever met. And to be able to learn from, them, to be able to travel with them and teach with them, is just like such a cool experience, So that was amazing. And on the side, I would say, like, my side project was my wife and I, Ashley, like, we started a cash-based physical therapy clinic in Atlanta where we moved whenever I got out. And it was a huge airport where I could travel easier for the jobs that we had with mobility wad. But we felt like it would be a good market just in general because it was a pretty active city. And that clinic ended up growing way faster than we thought, mainly, I think, because what I was doing was testing all the stuff that I was teaching. And I was educating people locally as well on, like, this is why we're different. This is what we do. This is how you should treat yourself. And it just sort of like, it caught fire a lot faster than we thought. So, that's sort of my segue into the business side of things. And we eventually ended up focusing a lot more on that and not teaching quite so much anymore. But I have to say, like, that's literally one of the more enjoyable, couple years of my life where we're able to, like, go around and really just see the country, see the world, actually, and educate people, which is just such a fun thing to do.
I mean,
So-
Danny and I have been into some crazy places together, which is, it's real
Oh,
fun
yeah.
to be sort of people show. I try to tell people, I'm like, hey, you don't understand. People show us their dirty laundry.
Yeah, they
They're
do.
like, help us sort these really complex problems. And I just want to set this for everyone because sort of in your current stage, as we get into thinking about musculoskeletal care and the revolution that it's undergoing, and I'm not going to say attack, but evolution from the internet and AI, and everyone's an expert, and that you have an iPhone in a commercial gym, and you're suddenly an expert. You go from kind of big industrial care physical therapy, where you're working institutionalism. You're trying to innovate. The system's not really set up for that. Then you move into this private care situation where you really have total autonomy to treat and manage and create the life you want. And I think you start a podcast at that time where you're talking about these things, and you suddenly start a little side hustle where you're talking about the business of physical therapy.
Right.
Because I just at the APTA annual convention, and then I just went to the Parker chiropractic annual convention, like within the kind of consecutive months.
Yeah.
And I really see that there are a lot of young clinicians and veteran clinicians who are like, I feel like we're constrained, we're hamstrung by the current system of reimbursement, of how we get to treat, how we get to think about the problems of being primary care providers. You start, and correct me if I'm wrong, you start this little side hustle podcast and it kind of blows up in your face. Is
Right.
that?
Yes.
And that really leads you to the PT biz. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part. So yeah, I'd started the Doc and Jock podcast with my buddy Joe Shimonik, who just one of my best friends, great strength coach. And we're like, cool, this is an opportunity for us to talk to the smartest people in strength and conditioning. And they all say yes because we tell them we have a podcast, right? So we do that for years, and it got to the point where it was, we had a lot of people listening to it. It was somewhere between 50 and 60,000 downloads a month on that strength and conditioning podcast. And what I noticed is we would do these sort of one-off shorter answer Q&A kind of question podcasts. And I would get these business questions from people about cash practices. And every time I would answer it, my email would be like flooded with people, or my Instagram would be flooded with people who are asking me questions about whatever the topic I was talking about. And, we didn't think we were doing anything different than anybody else. But we've been able to grow past myself in a relatively short period of time with our clinic. And so I started to share a bit more information on the business side, and that started to obviously like grow. I think I sort of struck a bit of a nerve with people like really interested in learning that information. And also, I mean, I think you got to look at our profession and healthcare in general. It's changed a lot in the last 10 years. But yet it's still shitty, right? Like it's just one of those things that like, it's just not, it could be so much better. And when we get a chance to work with people in the model that we run, which is really like low volume, the provider feels like they can use their skill set to the extent that they wish they could. They're not limited by constraints of volume that are coming in or time. And the patient feels like they're actually being listened to. They actually have somebody that wants the best for them and can help quarterback their health and wellness. And it's not tied to their insurance. And frankly, the playing field is so much more level now. Like when people's deductibles go up the way they have over the last decade, I mean, what we're talking about is like, it's the same. Like if you want to go somewhere in network or out of network or just cash, like you may have a $6,000 deductible individually, 12,000 for a family. If you hit that, something terrible has happened that year, right? And we're hoping that you don't. So everybody's an informed consumer, and what we find is we get more and more people that are looking for a more specialized person and more curated sort of health experience, that they're going to actually treat them like a person, not a number.
And hyper local. I mean, that person is in their community.
Totally, which is even better, right? Because I can't go to a music festival here without bumping into who knows how many old patients I have. And I haven't even treated a patient in like 3 years, right? And it's so fun, because I might not remember their name, but I'll be like, how's your knee doing? Like I remember injuries for some odd reason. And it is just super fun to like be a part of a community and be somebody that's like helping them achieve these other goals, and not saying like, hey, stop running. How about we figure out why you're having pain running, and then let's train for a race. What race would you like to do? Where would you like to travel with your friends to go do this thing? Like, and actually being an advocate for their health. So that's been a very interesting, change and a fun thing to do, which we did locally. And then, to be able to share that with other business owners, has been awesome because it's actually worked for them, right? When we didn't know that we were doing anything that was any different than everybody else.
So I'm just going to try to press rewind really quickly because one of the common themes we've had on this podcast is how people deal with transitions. And we've had other folks who've been in the military and left the military. We've had a lot of athletes who've left, professional athlete careers. And it seems to me that your transition from deciding to leave, at least from the outside looking in, that your decision to leave the military and go out on your own, partly working for us and partly starting your own clinic, looked pretty seamless. But that's just from the outside. Like, was that a really difficult decision to leave this? I mean, if you decided that you were this is like what you were doing for your life, like,
Right.
was it a difficult decision, or was it just like, no way, I see the future, I'm ready to do this? What was that transition like for you?
No, I don't think it was easy. It's looking back, I don't know how I could ever go back to, that career again. Not to say that there's anything wrong with it, but just for what my, sort of like skill set is and what I enjoy doing. Like I didn't realize when I was at my brigade, it was like, basically they gave me this little cash clinic to start. No one knew who I was. They didn't know. I had to actually like go find people to come and see me. I had to go run with our brigade commander, once a week to do a meeting with him so that I could talk to him about the things that we were doing and what I needed help for. So it was basically like this incubated entrepreneur experience. And I really liked it. And the military has its pros and cons. Like it is a albatross of a group. Like I had someone tell me one time, like the military is a big ship. It turns really slowly. So it can be a frustrating place for somebody like myself or somebody like Kelly that maybe wants to see a squirrel and chase it. Right. Like that's the stuff that I don't know. We realize when we're that young, when we get into it. But it was hard because that was this is what I knew. Right. It was my family, my just surroundings. Like it just was normal. Right. So to go into the civilian world, it's strange. Like you can't, yell at people in the civilian world. Not everybody's punctual. You don't get to do some of the fun shit that I would get to do. Like for me to get to go to combatives training or to go, shoot at the range or to go do, CQB with some of these guys or something like that. Like I'm not doing that anymore. My life's a little bit more boring, but also more predictable at the same time. So the transition is not easy, but for me to be able to also have a foot in the door with the military and be able to do some cool stuff on the consulting side with what the Ready State was, or Mobility One, the Ready State were doing at the time was so fun because I still got to like hang with some of these groups that, to be honest with you, I probably never would have stepped foot on some of the military bases that I got a chance to go in as a consultant in. And they take me like credibly, seriously for what I have to say. If I showed up as a captain in the Army, they would have been like, get out of here, dude. Like it's so funny how that changes. So it actually, to me, helped me help the military in an even different way.
Let me, this is the perfect time. Often there's this image that there's a single person doing this by themselves.
Yeah.
Your business partner and wife, Ashley, she's been the boss of this, your PT clinic. She is, you rope her into that.
Yeah.
Juliet was an unwitting accomplice. I mean,
Sure.
eventually she was like, okay, I guess I got to leave this track of being, a lawyer. And more importantly, you're on your way to being a partner. And you were like, I'll just, swing over here because you need help.
Oh God.
How was that transition? Did Ash jump right on board? Because all of a sudden you're like, hey, hon, I know you have your own brain and your own aspirations, but you're going to talk about physical therapy 24 hours a day.
Yeah. Well, I'll
how
answer that question. But first of all, Juliet, I would like to know, is it hard for you to watch us just flounder when it comes to trying to be organized and like create systems, which we probably would never do? Like, I imagine that was hard for you to watch as you're seeing some of the inefficiencies that somebody like Kelly and I would do. Cause I think that's probably what happened with Ashley as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Be
it's
careful
both
what you
things.
say
Like
right now.
sometimes,
I'm right next to you. Okay?
yeah,
I'm right
sometimes
here.
it's annoying. The only time it was annoying for me, and I think Kelly and I have been trying for years to rebrand this, but the only thing that was ever annoying was when I would come into a room or be part of a conversation where people like would treat me as though I'm Kelly's secretary.
Oh yeah.
That's the only time it would get under my skin. And, there's still ways in which that kind of thing happens where people just think I'm Kelly's like side piece. So that bothers me. But in terms of like us working together, not at all, because I think it was just pretty clear early on.
If you're
Like,
my side piece, who's the main piece?
yeah, it was pretty clear early on, like, we have different skill sets, and it was pretty obvious from like day one of opening the gym that we could each bring different things to it. And so in that way, like between us, it was never annoying. I think the only thing that was annoying for me was just this sort of outside looking in perception.
Yeah.
That we've been trying to correct for years. Like, dude, we're a dyad. We've been doing this together since day one. I know you and Ashley have been as well.
Right.
And so I think that's, and again, it's common anytime there's someone who's the face of a business, this happens, and it's not, nobody's doing that maliciously, but that would be the only, just to answer your question, that's the only time I would get annoyed.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's not fair. Like that sort of like, it's like, oh, look at all the stuff that Kelly's done. Look at all the stuff Danny's done. And we would get that a lot. And like, if we're involved in like an entrepreneurs group or something, like no one wanted to talk to Ashley about anything. Like they would just want to talk to me. And they would ask me these questions about like operations and customer success. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Go ask Ashley. Like, I don't know what we do for that, and for her, so like she was running nonprofits. She'd been working with a group called Operation Homefront. And we just had she had our second child. So our daughter was 6 months old. Our son was under 2, when we moved to Atlanta and got out of the military. So there was a lot going on there. And if you know the nonprofit world's tough. It is terrible pay, terrible hours. You got to be really bought in on the mission because you're basically like, you're slightly more than a volunteer. And for Ashley, when she looked at what her sort of career trajectory was and what she was interested in, it was at least worth it for her to try to like take a crack at helping grow the business. And she was so good at it, especially, on the operational side of things. She's so good with people, but yet also detail oriented and can like build systems
It's
out.
kind of
And
annoying.
that's like a rare combination, right? So she killed it. And she's one of the best operators of those businesses that I've ever seen. So now, we sold our clinic a couple years ago. And now we just focus on, working with other, entrepreneurs, and she runs customer success for what we do with PT Biz, as well as helping all these businesses with what they do as well. And it's just like it's just fun to work with your spouse. Number one, I think people tell you not to, and they're wrong. Like, what are you talking about, man?
We say all the time, I'm like, people are like, how do you work with Juliet? I'm like, well, don't you work with your spouse? They're like, no. And I was like, you don't like solve problems or go grocery shopping or make dinners or
Yes.
Like you already are, you're doing the hard
you're
work
already
with your partner.
like you're in a partner. We're just we're both in an expanded partnership,
Yes.
I would say, right? But yeah, right. For us, it would feel weird now if we went off to separate jobs, right? It just doesn't, we can't even conceive of it. Okay. So I would love to just talk a little bit more, and I don't mean to throw shade on like the physical therapy industry or whatever you call it.
It's a perfect product of an archaic system.
But what I'd love to know is like, just before we move on from the clinic, like what kind of experiences and outcomes were you able to see in patients when you were actually able to spend a full hour with them? And then secondarily, was there, because I think it was early in the days of, people paying cash for this kind of service.
And I want to just pause here for a second, because we call it sort of insurance or cash based is what people, but really what we're seeing is independent, non-insurance based care. And I always, so every time I hear cash based PT, I want to be like, that's really not what the impetus was. It's a easy way to describe it, right?
Yeah,
but it's not the thing.
And I do really feel like my own perception over the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, we started doing that, when Kelly left when he left in 2007, we just were like, wow, I can't deal with insurance, and that's too complicated and don't want to do that. So, if you want to come see Kelly in the pain cave, it's pay cash or don't come see him, right? You've been in the pain cave.
I have. And I got to be honest with you. It's literally, I thought to myself, when I got out of the military and I went to go, start our clinic, and I looked at these different locations and stuff like that, the only person I'd ever seen treat somebody that was a non-insurance based patient was literally Kelly shuffling around a table inside this Connex box that was tiny. And I'm like, people pay for this? And he's like, yeah, like $250 or whatever. And I was like, holy shit.
And not only that, I just want to tell everyone, I could leverage off the walls. I still miss that today. I would push my feet up on the wall and get enormous leverage that I couldn't do. And I was exactly 1 foot from the gym.
You might be onto something. Maybe that's like something that's going to be like the next fad, like stretch labs, but it's going to be people in like these little Connex boxes, and they're just
you just cluster them together, all these Connex boxes. Yeah. So anyway, I don't even know where my question was, but I just, I do feel like there's been this huge change in mentality. And I think part of it is generational, where I think some, maybe sort of tail end Gen Xers and generations below us are seeing and more willing to pay cash for the kind of healthcare that they want. Yeah. But when you started, it seemed like out there in the world, it was like Kelly in his Connex box and you guys in Atlanta, and we were kind of it.
Yeah. And you originally you had asked, like, did I notice a difference in outcomes? And I'll be honest with you. So if anybody's listening to this and they're a clinician, they might be able to relate to this, because when I was in a high volume setting, as I got from my brigade, I went to Schofield, or went to Fort Benning, where I was at the airborne school. I was getting a lot of people that are sick call for airborne school, and I was getting a lot of people that were on their way out of the military. Okay, so part of that at that time, I was a part of the VA process to assess range of motion and like, so what I was getting was a lot of stuff where I couldn't actually make a meaningful difference with people, and it really didn't like it doesn't behoove you in any way for me to help resolve all your problems as you're going through your VA screen for your rating, right? Like, so like, I know kind of what I'm getting myself into with that. Like, I'm mainly just documenting the injuries they've had and the things they want covered whenever they leave. But to me, that's not my world, man. I solve problems, right? So like, doing that sucked. It sucked. And not only that, but like, sometimes you get people, maybe they don't want to get better. It doesn't really make sense for them to want to get better if they, are on a profile and don't want to go to physical training. And so, I started to get to the point where it was like, am I any good at this? Like, people are not getting better. I'm getting frustrated. I'm not sure if I'm making like these meaningful changes. Maybe I'm doing the wrong things. I'm telling them to do the wrong things. I'm misdiagnosing things. And when we got out of the military and I went into my cash practice, I couldn't freaking believe how good I was because, and it wasn't just that I was like a great clinician. It's that they were paying me to do the shit that I was telling them to do. And their compliance was off the charts. Like,
Yeah, if you want good
Right.
outcomes, choose good
Right. If
patients,
you've
right?
taken time off work and you've paid $200 out of
Yes.
your own pocket
Yep.
and someone is giving you some things to do, you are way more likely to do them.
Oh my God. They're sitting there taking notes while I'm telling them stuff, right? And I'm like, I can't get some people to come back for a follow-up visit for God's sakes. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'm getting these amazing outcomes for people. They're super interested in what I have to say. And not only that, but one thing I never got exposed to was ongoing sort of performance and wellness work with people, because in the military, you're an eval and reeval machine. You're just evaluate, discharge, evaluate, reevaluate, discharge. You write a plan out for like 4 weeks usually before you can get somebody back in for a follow-up. So you gotta trust that your techs and your PTAs are like following through on the right things, but you don't get to do that side of it, which I really enjoyed and I missed. So, to be able to all of a sudden, now we're like getting pain resolved really fast. And then it's like you're curious, like, well, what else could we do? What else could I do? And now we get to work on performance goals. We get to work on long-term, wellness changes, habitual changes, and things like sleep and, nutrition and stress and movement and all kinds of like, almost like, these dream sessions of like, what do you want to do physically? And it was such a fun place to be and such a cool place to be as a business owner too, because I had all this recurring business from people that just wanted to be super, pain-free, high performance life, activities for as long as they could. And that was like, I'd never experienced that. I'd never seen that before, but it is super, it's so fun. It's like the most fun as a clinician that I've ever had.
This episode of the Ready State podcast is brought to you by LMNT.
You know what I love about Element?
Let's hear it, baby.
Caffeine free. There is too much caffeine going into our athletes, and especially youth athletes. Remember, I was recently working with that team at a university, and they were like, one of the women athletes is like, how many bang energies is too many in a day? And I was like, are you serious?
Well, think about when we grew up, it was like we would have like one full sugar soda like once a month.
Yeah, if you
and
were
then our
lucky,
parents
on a
would
field
drink
trip.
some like crappy Folgers coffee, and no kids drank coffee at all. Like I just started drinking coffee when I was a freshman in college, and even then it was like one coffee a day. And now, people and athletes alike are just drinking a massive amount of caffeine every day.
We think, and we've been saying this for a while, we want to separate our hydration from our nutrition. And having a hydration solution, Element, that is caffeine free, that doesn't have any sugar, and magnesium, potassium, oftentimes people don't get enough potassium, and sodium. I mean, you've got all of your electrolytes there. It's very tasty. And what we're going to see is you're actually going to perform better because you need salt to kick ass, especially if you're sweating.
Yeah. And I mean, I just, to the extent that everybody loves that like 4 o'clock caffeine bump, know that it is going to definitely mess up your sleep and sleep quality. And oftentimes we can just have even a half a packet of Element at that time of day. And what we realize is we probably were just grossly dehydrated and didn't actually need caffeine.
I'm going to go with hypohydrated.
We were hypohydrated.
It feels fancy. Having a hot cup of Element with pinkies up is fancy. And again, caffeine free. You're hitting your electrolyte needs. Sugar free. This is the solution. And look, people, I want you to lean into caffeine as a performance enhancing drug, but you cannot just be dallying with it. Get your caffeine out of your drinks. Stop doing that all the time obsessively. Use your caffeine appropriately. Let's hydrate like adults.
True
Hydrate
fact.
like human beings.
Like human beings. Thank you.
Right now, if you order through our link, you can get a free sample pack with all of Element's flavors. And if you want to party in your mouth, try sparkling. Go to drinklmnt.com/TRS.
We literally drink it every day.
Every day.
This episode of the Ready State podcast is brought to you by Momentous.
Let me ask you this, Shay. Do you like to eat something big before you exercise?
I don't like to eat something big. However, I have been well trained to make sure that before I work out, I get about 150 calories on board.
Yeah, that's, I think, so crucial. I think when you're exercising, right, or fitnessing in quotation marks, low intensity, doesn't matter.
Yeah, and the key with that though is that that 150 calories is just for when I'm doing like a 1 hour workout. If I'm going for a 2 or 3 hour mountain bike ride, I'm making sure that I wake up in enough time to eat a whole actual meal.
And then what we're talking about is the intersession carbohydrate, which is a revolution for most folks. Because most people are like, carbs. I think we see a lot of people who roll in fasted, which is, look, if you want to suck, fine. But what my solution for them is, let's get you some fuel on board at the start of the workout and immediately start chasing that carbohydrate in a simple way. Ideally, you have a piece of toast, some banana, peanut butter, something that's easy in your stomach, and you're fueling during that session, right? But the bottom line is that this is that solution for people who, one, are going to go longer, and B, you need some carbohydrate for that high intensity exercise.
Yeah, and we also have a lot of our expert friends and nutritionist friends who are like, you really need to start getting some calories on board if you've been working out for longer than 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And I totally understand, like, oftentimes like gels and other sort of athletic products can be gross and hard to digest while you're training. And so our recommendation is just to have a water bottle full of fuel, with you next to the pool deck, next to the track, whatever you do.
It really makes a difference, especially if you're talking about young athletes going for multiple sessions or they weights and then a 2-hour practice. If you're going to a 2-hour practice, you better have a fueling plan in that practice. Fuel is the solution.
Not to mention, it's super tasty.
It is super tasty and doesn't mess with your stomach at all. It's legit profile.
Very easy to digest.
If you want to learn more, go to livemomentous.com/TRS and use code TRS for 20% off your first purchase. See how being fueled with NSF certified drink carbohydrate mix will change your game.
Improves your performance.
And sorry, I just want to say that, there is a time and a place for this whole scope of care.
Yeah.
Right. We have detrained sedentary people, our insurance model, like how do we get them back to just base function?
Yes.
And I think that lens, because we were there for so long, really ended up coloring our profession a little bit. And because we discovered CrossFit and because suddenly I was dragged into all of these high performance environments, I mean, every sport, every branch of the government, the CIA, the FBI, all these Fortune 500 companies where people are like, hey, we're looking for an advantage. And just being not hurt is not good enough.
Yeah.
We were able to start to swing this pendulum around to say, hey, I think we can also practice at this other end of the practice act, right? We can be at the top of our licensure here in terms of performance, which really we developed, invented performance therapy, which was, hey, we're not just going to put out fires without context, but we're going to see and spot these opportunities in the physiology, in the psychology, in the training, and the range of motion, and we're going to kind of lean into that. And that's still very confusing for people, because it's really easy to see like, well, your ankle healed itself in 4 to 6 weeks, discharge, versus, hey, I'm trying to win a gold medal. And I think it took a hot second for people to pivot around to say, oh, there's this performance model, and in that, you suddenly are now the primary care provider for people who are looking for, hey, I got a little hot spot. I can't put out the wattage. My shoulders, my turnover is a little bit slow. And we can reapply those, we can apply those same sets of tools. And when you discover that, just for everyone listening, it is really, really fun because now we are collaborating and it's not just ministering to an injured person. And look, if you have your ACL, you're going to need some low-level PT for a minute.
Yeah. Well, imagine the difference is this. Most people go to a healthcare provider and traditionally they're trying to tell them what's wrong with them and what they need to stop doing. For us, what happens is someone comes to us after typically have been frustrated by not getting what they're looking for somewhere else, or maybe not getting the outcomes that they want. And all of a sudden, we have the time to listen to them. We have the time to educate them on really the things that we know matter much more than just like what your x-ray says or what your MRI says or whatever, or this series of injections that failed, because if we can't talk to you about sleep or getting enough hydration, like these simple things we know help with healing, like how are we going to expect to make an internal change in your body if you don't have the right things in place for that to occur?
And you cannot have those conversations in a traditional model. I think that's what I want people to understand.
15 minutes.
Yeah, it's impossible.
No.
I mean, just at Parker Chiropractic, someone was like, hey, how would I do this? I'm like, well, you may have to change, because the chiro model is even higher volume.
Yes.
I said, you may have to think differently about how you're setting up. And it may be that you have to have meetings and you have education times and you're doing small group training, but 8 minutes is insufficient. And it's the same amount of time that a typical physician is going to spend with her patient, right? Yeah. She is just triaging to the next thing. And if it's, I can't quickly solve this with a pill or a pharmaceutical, then I'm going to have to put you down the road. And this was the first time where we could if you wanted to spend 90 minutes with someone, you could, because sometimes it's complex to get someone going. And the other thing I just want to point out is that we found that we could start to make real change. And if I couldn't make real change in 3 visits, I discharged you.
Yeah.
That's what was happening.
Sure.
I mean, we were ahead of the.
Kelly would sort of fire people because he's like, look, I have this, all these modalities that I use and I have my approach, but if I'm not able to make change, like go see someone else.
Yes.
There's other,
there's some other thing.
there's some other thing that he's missing or not seeing or something.
Well, I think so one of the mistakes I think people make is they think the more shit they give somebody, the more valuable it is, right? And I used to make this mistake. So I would have somebody come in, I would rush through a subjective, and I would do as much hands-on work as I possibly could. And then I would give them like 6 weeks of programming that I would build out for them, because I felt, well, if I just do all this hands-on work and we can condense weeks down into a day, and then all of a sudden I give you this work to do on your own, like you'll see me fewer times, it's more cost-effective, great, right? And what ended up happening is I would get not the best outcomes for people. I would have terrible compliance with, imagine somebody giving you a 6-week program after like an hour of them spending time with you and just like literally crushing your joints and dry needling the shit out of you. And then all of a sudden you're expected to do this stuff on your own with like really no cueing and coaching, none of that, right? And because I thought if I just give you all this stuff at visit 1, then it's more valuable. And it's because I didn't know what people really valued, and people value clarity. And this is the really interesting thing where, years later, I had a student that I never would take students on for very long, but I would take students for like a day, because I'm like, you're not gonna be able to train any of my folks. Like you can sit and see what I do, but I don't really want to take like a rotation. So I would have a lot of these students would pop in for a day. And one of the students I had, I will never forget, because he spent the day with me and I had an eval towards the very end of the day. And during this eval, I talked to this lady who had this chronic lower back issue, and we literally talked for the entire hour. I didn't do anything manual. I didn't even give her anything to do. And at the end of the visit, we have these treatment plans that people can decide to do if they want to, or if they can see us visit to visit. And she walks out and she buys like a $2,000 treatment plan with me. And I didn't do anything of like treatment wise to her at all. All we did was talk. She aired her frustrations. She's super emotional. She was just really like very frustrated that she couldn't do what she wanted to do. And she'd seen all these people, and it was like, anyway, it's not an uncommon story for a lot of people. And he was like very confused. He goes, you didn't do anything. Like, I don't get it. And I was like, yeah, you don't. I did a lot. Like, that lady believes this is the right place for her. And it is. And she's going to make a fantastic change. I promise you that. Right. And it's because for a lot of people, they don't know why they're having pain, and they don't have a clear idea of what it's going to take to get it back. An honest opinion, right? Where it's like, listen, this is not going to be easy. You're going to have to make some changes. We're here to help you with that. And I almost view myself more as like a human body consultant than I do as like a clinician, because they need to educate you. And one of the most important things I can possibly do is teach you how to take care of yourself, so that if you have these reoccurrences, which is probably pretty high if you have chronic issues, you know what to do about it, and you're not going to freak out. And then you got to go see your primary care again or whatever else. And you feel very empowered. And we know from a standpoint of chronic pain, that's like the less you see that as a threat, the less pain you have associated with it. There's all this like positive stuff we can do just from talking and letting somebody talk back to us and air some of that. So, but we don't get reimbursed for that by insurance, right? Like I can't say like CPT code, long, deep conversation for 60 minutes. Like I'm not going to get much for that, right? But in a cash practice, who cares? I do whatever the hell I want. And that's what's awesome about it.
Yeah, and sometimes people just need to be heard.
Yes.
Right. I think that's a huge thing, is like people need to feel like someone has heard and been able to absorb and think creatively about, often what they feel like are intractable problems. And that has so much value, but you're right. There's no CPT code for that.
No. Julieta, well, there's 2 things that come to mind. Number one is that Stuart McMillan was recently on Huberman.
Oh, great. I saw that,
yeah. And he said, let's stop thinking about the body as a machine of just inputs and outputs. And we should be starting to think about ourselves as biologists. And we're curious about how the organism interacts in their environment, and how the organism interacts with other organisms, and what the organism, So I think that as you're saying that, right, this really thinking in this systems holistic approach. There's this complex person in front of me. And what does this person need? That's a high performance environment. That's a high performance approach where we look and say, the limiting factor here is your sleep. The limiting factor is nutrition. The limiting factor here is X. and let me bring those resources to you, and you own your 50% of that. Sometimes Juliet makes the point that I'm probably just an average physical therapist. But she's like, but you're probably the total ninja of giving people, shifting loci of control, giving people agency, giving them permission to move and to sort of understand.
You guys have said this in passing a couple times, but I think it's so important because, people who, in my opinion, by and large, are going to go and pay for physical therapy or other healthcare services tend to be people who want to move.
Yeah.
And in many cases, and we've all seen this 1,000 times in our own clinic and our own experience, where they've gone into some kind of traditional medical system. And again, seems like we're throwing shade on it, but we understand the limitations, but have been told, stop doing the thing you love. And
that's reasonable advice. You're doing the thing you love. That's ruined your life.
Right. But
you can't go to you can't go to work because you have low back pain.
Right. But it's I think it can be really a revelation for people to come into a room where I love that you use that word clarity, where with clarity and empathy, you can give these people a little bit of hope.
Yes. Well, it's clarity. And honestly, a lot of it's accountability too, because one of the things that we found when it comes to people paying out of pocket for something like this, I used to have so many compliance issues when I was in the military. People would come in and I would pop quiz them on their homework exercises. I'd be like, cool, so show me your homework exercise. And they would get on the ground or do some weird variation of the shit that I showed them. And I'm like, you didn't do this at all, did you? And it's like I had to like prove that they weren't doing it.
18%.
But it was like, what a terrible place to be as a provider. Like when I started working with people and they're paying to come and see me, my assumption is if you want to waste your time and money, like go ahead and do that. Like it's in my opinion, I don't think that's a good idea. I expect you're doing these things, right? And it's such a game changer because I think what we forget is when you have skin in the game, let's say you pay attention, and you want to make a habitual lifestyle change.
You pay attention.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody does it. Sometimes it's maybe we need entrepreneurial support, right? Like your friend Mike Brown, right? Who does who's on the podcast. He does, wealth coaching and money mindset stuff. I promise you, if he says stuff for free to somebody and has that person pay them, the difference in the outcome is going to be so much better when somebody actually pays for it, because now they're invested in it. They've put their energy that they store in money from their hard work, and now they gave to somebody else to then help them get the outcome that they want. And that is, I think, what we underestimate in healthcare when it comes to making these challenging changes. Now, is it perfect? No, because it does exclude people that can't afford to do some of that. But the playing field is a lot more level than people think. And it's not necessarily our fault. It's just the fact that insurance sucks and deductibles are going up and everybody has more skin in the game. Like, it's shocking how high our family's deductible is. If you're self-employed in particular, I mean, for fuck's sake, like, you have an enormous deductible and we go out of pocket to everything, right? Unless something terrible happens.
So this is a good segue into something I want to talk about, which is the money.
Yeah.
And not necessarily the insurance or cash pay part of it, but what physical therapists actually make.
Yeah.
And the backstory
and there's student loan
to
debt.
this,
Can we talk about that too?
Yeah, and student loan debt. The backstory to this is, I went to law school a few years before Kelly, and we have the same 3-year doctoral degree in a thing. But I could step out of law school, and this was, by the way, 25 years ago, and my first job could no problem be making $150,000 a year plus bonuses. And then the trajectory
same for physical therapy.
The trajectory of
kidding.
being a lawyer is just up, and if you stick with it and whatever, right? Like, there's real money to be made.
Right.
And I get it that a lot of people don't go into healthcare professions because they're trying to make money, but also at the same time, it does matter. And I did some research at the time when Kelly was in school and got out of school. And it's like the average physical therapist in a traditional model is making like $70,000 a year. And these are in big markets.
And that's up.
These are in like the Bay Area and Atlanta, right? So who knows what they're making in smaller markets. But I mean, that's a huge difference, right? You're making the same time and the same or more financial investment in your postgraduate education. But
I can't remember.
The opportunity to make money in physical therapy is not good.
No. I went and worked for a physician for a year and a half at a clinic that was very progressive theoretically, because you could be evaluated, get an MRI, radiograph, book for surgery, see a physio in one day.
Yeah.
And they started me at $80,000. 2008, 2007.
Right. Right.
And
That was already like insane.
and in that year, I did the math. I made them $450,000 easy without any over. I mean, that was just like easy estimation, not the surgeries I brought in, any other thing.
Right. Right.
And that was when you and I were like, "Hey, I think I think we should take a swing at this because we can have a lot more autonomy into
Right.
this thing."
But anyway, the question I have here is, we haven't really, we've just touched a little bit about what you're doing now with PT Biz, which is you're helping clinicians transfer and grow cash-based businesses. But uh, maybe you could talk a little bit more about exactly what that means, what you're actually doing, and then what that means for clinicians, not just on not just about what we've been talking about, which is probably a lot more job satisfaction and actually being able to better impact the clients they're working for, but
Yeah.
also like their bottom line. Like, what does it mean? And I know you have numbers because
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of your masterminds, and one of the coolest things about it is you actually are sharing people's financial successes and growth,
It's
which is
motivating.
really motivating and really cool to see. And not a lot of masterminds do that. So I don't even know where my question was in there, but I think there's something you could talk about.
Yes.
I just want to say real quick shout out to Made to Move PT. They just opened their first out of state business.
That's right.
I just saw that this morning.
Yeah.
I'm just watching these young kids kill it, and I'm like, wow, maybe I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah, I mean, to answer, I'll give you some context. So, what we see comes from, a couple places. Like, we see the APTA states that the average PT comes out of school $152,000 in student debt, right?
152.
152 on average. That's the last number that I saw. It might be different now. Now, if you look at average salary, I can tell you in Atlanta, the average salary for a starting physical therapist, it really depends on the setting that you're in, but I would say probably somewhere between $75,000 and $90,000. So let's just, for math's sake, we can say that your starting salary is roughly half what you're paying to get the degree, which is not a great exchange, honestly, right? Like, it's very skewed to the debt side, and it's hard for them to dig themselves out of that. Now, why is that? Well, a lot of it has to do with, honestly, how much of a PT can generate. So if I look at what an attorney can generate, and I actually just had to do this recently. Sometimes we have to get involved with IP attorneys. I'm sure you guys have had to do the same thing. The internet's a weird place, and but my IP attorney, $650 an hour, right? So not a small amount of money versus most cash-based physical therapists are going to be somewhere between, let's call it, on the very low end, and if you're doing this, you should probably work with us, like $150 a visit, and on the higher end, closer to like $300, or somewhere between like $150 and $300. But it doesn't hold a candle to my IP attorney, right? And the billable hours that they have can create a lot of gross revenue for the practice, so they can obviously make a bigger portion of that, or a larger amount, even at the same percentage. So if we see the average physical therapist is generating roughly like $300,000 in revenue in an in-network clinic, if that clinic is trying to maintain what we consider labor efficiency ratios, so the ability to pay somebody and still have the right margin left over for taxes and overhead and benefits and all of that, right?
Front office staff.
Yeah, everything that goes into the business, you really need to be somewhere in the range of like 1/3 or maybe a little bit more. That's kind of where we're at. So when we look at what hamstrings physical therapists' ability to generate income or to be paid more, in many cases, actually what they can generate for the work that they do. So it's not as valued, especially by insurance. It's not really valued at all. I mean, sometimes they're going to reimburse you $50 to $70 a visit, no matter what you do, or not only that, what your experience level is. So you can take a new grad, pay them less, and they get reimbursed the exact same amount as somebody that has 10 years of experience. And this is where it's a problem for an older clinician as well that doesn't see a lot of upward trajectory in their in the ability for them to make more money as they progress in their career. So why are people so interested in going this cash-based route and or an in-network clinic that has to bolt on cash services? It's because there's not a lot of other great options, right? So if we can take somebody and they can say, okay, if I go out on my own and I'm moderately successful, like let's say you to the point where you're seeing 100 patient visits yourself and you're generating $200 an hour, you're generating $20,000 a month in revenue. And if you can do that in a low overhead environment, let's say you're netting 15, and you could potentially double your salary even after other expenses that you may have, like payroll tax and things you don't pay as much as an employee, but you could double your salary at versus working somewhere else in some scenarios. And you could also grow that well past yourself and create a business that has enterprise value, passive revenue, and creates a team and a culture that you find very rewarding, right? So I think the reason that we've seen so many people, and to date, we've helped over 1,000 clinicians, not like 1,000 clinicians have listened to a podcast, like face to face, belly to belly, like in the weeds with them, starting, scaling and growing these businesses over the
1,000 businesses.
1,000 over the last 6 years. Even in the people we're actively working with now, just within PT Biz, we have about 300 businesses, and that's going to be somewhere in the range of 80 to $100 million in top line revenue combined with those businesses, and probably somewhere in the range of like 75 to 80,000 new patients seen in the last 12 months. So this is like a significant number of people. If it was all under the banner of like one umbrella name of a clinic, it would be one of the biggest, groups of clinics in the whole country. But these are all independently owned. They have their own businesses, their own names, whatever they want to do. And the reason that there's so many is because the options are not great in any other way. And many of them don't want to start their own business, me included. I didn't really want to do that either, but I didn't want to go work for somebody else and, be forced to see 20 people a day and have to write all the notes and deal with like, calling to get reimbursed or more visits for an ACL repair that I know I need to see longer than they're authorizing. So that's why I think it is.
No, you got 12 visits for that ACL. I don't know what you're complaining about.
That's right. Yeah, you give me like 3 months, and it's like, what do you expect? The return rate's so high. So I think what you're seeing is the reason that's trended that way, and not just also in PT, but in other areas of healthcare, is because people want to work with patients in a more direct one-to-one way. They want lower volume because it's less of a burnout effect than high volume, and it increases their ability to pay their student loans off, to actually like create financial stability for themselves in a career field that is so rewarding that they would take a shitty, salary because it's an awesome job to have. So it allows them to actually stay in their career, but kind of get the best of both worlds.
Where do you think the opportunities in this musculoskeletal care? We're starting to see people like Darshan Shah and Next Health create an entire parallel universe. He's saying, hey, look, let's have emergency care for pathology and catastrophe. ERs are great. Cancer, let's manage that. But over here, we almost need to unhook the traditional medical model and just say, hey, look, we can talk about lifestyle and nutrition, all the things. This other system isn't set up for that at all. It's optimized to manage the car accident. Yep. And I'm so grateful for that, right? And over here, we need to have a parallel system. He's not saying let's denigrate that system at all. Let's continue to do that, but we need to have a parallel model. Is that a little bit what we need to be thinking about here? Is that, I've got this catastrophic model in the hospital, and then I have a parallel model. What do we call that?
I think it's sick care and healthcare, right? So like if I'm sick, I want to go to the best hospital I can possibly find, but most people are not sick. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. My sister-in-law is a functional med provider, and she recently started her own practice. But she'd been working at shock trauma. She'd been leading like trauma teams and doing research, like super high level, ex-military nurse practitioner with like combat trauma experience. Like she's a badass. And she got so frustrated with people that are coming into her hospital that are sick. And she's like, I don't have time to talk to them about why they shouldn't be drinking so much and why they need to be moving more and why they're having these circulatory issues. She's like, I have to solve the sick problem. And then I have to hope that they find the answer because I don't have time to do it. And like in that setting though, if you're hurt, if you're sick, what a great place to go. Like they know exactly what to do there. The challenge is if you're like the most of the other people who are not hurt or sick, where do you go if you're trying to not get sick, right? Like that is like healthcare in my opinion. We want to teach people how to be healthy and how to stay healthy. And that solves a lot of the sick problems, by the way. Like we know if we're proactive with that, it can take the strain off that system. So I think it is two adjacent systems, but you're starting to see providers that are actually like high level legit providers in this other world that are starting to get frustrated because they're seeing these problems that they can't really resolve. They can put a Band-Aid on it, but eventually it creates the same problem over and over again. And that can be really challenging for them. So, I think they both need to be there, but I can see how people could get very frustrated in the sick care world if they're trying to create healthcare problems.
But you're using a hammer when you need a screwdriver. I mean, I just feel like we have to begin to educate people to say that's the wrong place to look for the complex solutions to your complex biology.
Yes, for sure. Right. Like I was trimming a brisket 2 years ago and I almost cut my finger off with the knife that I was trimming it with, right? And I didn't look at it and say to myself, I must find the closest cash pay provider I can to talk to about sleep nutrition and management, like of my stress. It's like, take me to the emergency room, make sure my finger works, right? Like that's what I'm talking about. But like the average person, they fall down, they hurt their wrist, they go to the hospital, they go to the emergency room. They don't know what to do with them. They x-ray it, they give them NSAIDs, tell them not to do shit for a little while. They don't actually do anything to resolve the problem, in the first hand. And this is what's such a different example of like healthcare in the military. For instance, in the military, during sick call, if you go to the wrong place, like we'd have like nurse or PAs over here, we'd have radiology over here, we'd have dentists, we'd have physical therapy. And if you get in these lines, you get in the wrong line, you go to the front desk of the PAs and you're like, my back hurts. They go to physical therapy. They're not like, let's get the PA to make sure you don't have cancer first, then go to physical therapy. It's so, ridiculous to think that they need to do that. And it's a huge drain on the system. They don't want that. They go to physical therapy. And then sometimes I would have people who actually had cancer that we would find accidentally by asking them questions about red flags, and I would walk them over to the PA, right? And that's how it would work. And there was a much more efficient model to go about it. And that's not really how we do things, but that's also because people want to get reimbursed for the visits, right? So we have to keep in mind that this is also, that's a socialized system. This is not. And it has pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing is just crazy. One story I wanted to tell you, and I'm telling you this to confirm that you're going to have work for the rest of your life in this business, is that we live in Marin County where people have money. And we often are asked like, hey, can you recommend a physical therapist? And we really can't in our community.
Yes, I can. What do I do, Danny?
You text me.
Well, yeah. Right. But I mean, yeah, we do. I mean, that's what we do. We text
I have
you.
1,000 clinics
You live-
that I call on. I'm like, Danny, I am, here's this esoteric town in Texas. You're like, oh, I know a great guy.
And you live 3,000 miles away from us. And, we have this lucky ability to be able to text you because you have this huge network. But I mean, we're here, and Kelly no longer, he sees some clients, but rare. And we have, parents of kids with issues and we do have, there's Presidio Sport and Medicine has a clinic here in Marin, and that's like pretty much the one.
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't imagine there are a lot of great physical therapists. They're just all in network. And so, someone might have Kaiser and they might have, but we actually aren't familiar with who they are. And and in many cases, they'll have 15 minutes to work with someone's kid or on some kind of complex problem. And so I just feel like there's still a huge opportunity, especially as people have gotten more and more comfortable with realizing that if they want the kind of care that they hope to get, especially outside of sick care, they're just going to need to pay out of pocket for it. And I feel like there's this huge opportunity. And one of the things I wonder in your business is, are you also counseling your clients and mastermind people about like getting out there on social media and marketing? Because I think that's another thing is we may get a call after this podcast where someone's like, hey, Juliet and Kelly, we have this rad cash-based practice in Marin County. And why don't you know about us? But why don't we know?
Yeah.
Like, what is the role of individual physical therapists trying to kind of put themselves out there a little bit? Either individually.
I just
want
want to talk about knee pain and running. Now you're asking me to market my business.
Yes. Well, that's actually exactly right. What Kelly said is sort of what we get. And it's because, listen, it's not abnormal. Like, listen, you went to school to learn how to be a fantastic clinician, help people with these complex problems. And you just so found yourself in a situation where in order to do that in the manner that you want to do it in, you have to learn how to like go out and hunt and find people to be able to work with, because we just sit back and we get evals dumped on our plate and we do our job and we go home. And for a lot of people, that's actually all they want. And that's totally fine. I'm very jealous of people that can do that because I can't like turn it off, right? Like it would be very, I think, wonderfully stress-free to be able to just go home. But if you are trying to do your own thing, you can't do that. You can't sit in your office and be a great clinician and then expect people are going to find out about you. You can't do that. So yes, we talk all about primarily people, processes, sales, marketing, finance, leadership. These are like the big areas that we focus on with them. And then we have partner companies that we've been able to collaborate on to help create that can do things on their behalf. So for instance, if we look at something like marketing, one of the clinicians that we worked with for a few years in the Boston area was able to quickly grow a clinic and be able to, grow it to 7 figures and sell it. And he was a marketing ninja when it comes to things like HubSpot and email marketing and paid ads and building this ecosystem for the clinic, because clinicians are not going to do that. Like what we found is like, they just aren't going to, they don't have the time, interest, and they're not going to do it as well. So for us to be able to say, cool, let's create this. And now this does it for you. Now you get more people in the door. You build a brand on the back end. You still need to be visible in your community. You need to be visible on social media. But in the background, we can do these things that really help drive a lot of patient visits, right? And that company is called Patch. And it's awesome because it actually helps clinicians get a lot of their time back doing something that they just are really bad at and probably wouldn't do anyway. So better to let somebody do it that's really good. And that's where we run into problems is sometimes the best clinician nobody knows about because they're the worst marketer. And sometimes the worst clinician is the best marketer. And the game is not fair. It doesn't work that way. Like you need to be good at both. Like, and eventually, if somebody gets in your office and you suck, it'd be like if you have a shitty burrito and you're a great marketer, it's not going to work so well. So if you can be a great marketer and have a great burrito, then it's like this flywheel that just grows really, really quickly. And we'd only work with people that are great clinicians. Like people that work with us are fantastic at what they do. They just suck at business. And that's okay because they didn't go to business school.
So you mentioned in the pre-roll that you're working on a really cool AI thing, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So AI is, I don't know about you guys, but it scares the shit out of me. Frankly, I just, did a presentation on, not scary. It's amazing, but also kind of scary. So I recently did this presentation at one of our events where I talked about where it fits in physical therapy. And, for us, it's an area that we've leaned into heavily with our own business. It's helped our staff be so much more productive. It's something that on a day-to-day basis, I use, different AI applications in my workflow, and it just makes me a better coach, a better business owner. And it's a really cool technological advancement that we see. But for now, like, okay, I used ChatGPT to help my daughter create a monologue on Ludacris that she had to present in front of the whole school. And now, is this okay to use for homework? Here's my caveat to that. It may have helped us with the structure and kind of write some stuff out. My daughter had to get up in front of a couple hundred people and nail it, right? And so AI can't do that, but it can help us be, kind of prompt to be creative and to do these different things. And I think that's where it fits really well, is it can be an
My
accelerator.
daughter gave a monologue about Ludacris.
Yeah. So you get it. Like we live in Atlanta.
Just want to say that out loud one more time.
Listen, we
Don't gloss over that.
We live in Atlanta, Georgia, and she had to do one on like a famous, somebody in music, and she picked Ludacris because that's what you do in Atlanta. But she could have picked Outkast. She could have picked many other people in Atlanta, but Ludacris, and she killed it, dude.
You are good parents.
Yes, that's right. It's either that or Beyonce, but Beyonce wasn't from Atlanta. So but if we look at like physical therapy, I think we almost have blinders on as to what is happening. So we're both, involved in different entrepreneur groups, and the ones that I'm involved in that are more tech forward, holy shit. The AI conversations that these people are having are insane. Like I can't even keep up. But clinicians, they're so slow to adopt technology that it's like, it's almost like you have to beat them over the head with why this is so beneficial. And one of the few things that we've already started to see with AI and how it can be a huge advantage in the clinical space is actually in documentation, which is like the idea of AI helping remove mundane tasks and allowing us to focus on the human being is such a good idea, in my opinion, and something I wish I would have had whenever I was a clinician, because I hated writing notes, and now we can have these, rehab trained tools that actually do a great job of being able to listen to the interaction, write the note on your behalf, write a homework email that you can send out to somebody so you can help improve compliance, and saving people 2 to 6 hours a week. So to be able to like work on these problems that we're seeing firsthand with all the businesses that we work with, that's what's really cool. That's what I like about where we're at right now more than anything else. And I think we're just going to see more and more iterations of this where we're going to be able to help decrease burnout, get people's time back, and let them, hey, for that extra 6 hours a week, why don't you take half of that and go work out a bit more? And the other half, hang out with your spouse. Boom. Now your life is like so much better. And you literally saw the same number of people. You're just not writing all these stupid notes. So anyway, that's something that we've been working on. We're very passionate about because I do think it's going to make a meaningful difference.
Yeah, I mean, just the increase in job satisfaction,
Yeah.
right? Like nobody goes to physical therapy school to write notes.
Wrong.
And I mean, this is common in every profession. And, I mean, the amount of mundane things I did when I was practicing law was many.
Oh, yes.
Although I know that AI is also changing that profession
Big time.
massively, but I mean, just and I think that's the best way to look at it, right? It's not here to take away that in-person interaction. There's nothing that can take the place of like, Kelly trying to fix your internal rotation in person.
Right.
But man, not
I
having to
don't care about internal rotation more. What do I care about?
it's only hip extension.
Thank you.
I know. He only cares about hip extension now, but I would say shoulder internal rotation is number 2.
It's very
I would say
important.
that's number 2.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point because I think there's going to be a lot more people that become physical therapists. And here's why I say that. If you are a mediocre coder, like you're not a great tech coder, you are average, you're in trouble. Okay. Like legit, that is going to be an issue for people that can be offset already. Like the guy that's our technical co-founder showed me some stuff the other day that he's using in conjunction with building our tool and our AI software out. And I was shocked, blown away, and it's going to replace certain jobs for sure. Especially that are very like tech driven, clerical jobs, things like that are going to be administratively driven. Here's a great stat actually. Meta, because I'm a nerd, I'll listen to like earnings reports of companies, and I listened to Meta's earnings report of Q4 2024, and their CFO got in their P&L and he showed their administrative line item. And from Q3 2024 to Q4 2024, they reduced their administrative costs by $1.5 billion. So they went from like, I think it was 2.7 down to like 1.2 or something like that. Or actually it might even be lower than that. It went down to 700 million and it was at $1.5 million above that. So 2.2. And they said it was because of internal AI that they were using to offset administrative tasks. Now, think about that for a second. That is a massive reduction in workforce. That's happening. But what is not going to change? A human helping another human with pain. That's not going anywhere. There's going to be more people becoming plumbers, physical therapists, nurses, these face-to-face things that frankly, they're fantastic and we need in a population of people that are not all that healthy. So I think it's going to go that direction. But I think professions like that are going to get mundane tasks taken away to let them focus on actually doing their job in a more holistic way, in a more focused way to that person, and not be as distracted with some of the administrative things that you can have this sort of like assistant, helping you with and doing these notes for you and actually like prompting you on, hey, so-and-so's coming in and you talked to them about this last time, make sure you check this. Like these are all things that are happening right now that make our profession even cooler, honestly.
Wow.
So cool.
10 years ago, it doesn't look like this. I don't think you could even appreciate this. When the PT biz started taking off, I remember thinking, I hooked my wagon to the wrong train. I'm still talking about stretching. I'm still talking about mobilizing. Like, what am I even doing? I was like, Danny killed it. Where are you going to see yourself in 10 years? What are you excited about? I mean, this AI, this tool, this efficiency, I think is really remarkable. Can you prognosticate? I have a lot of high-level conversations with the APTA, the American Physical Therapy Association, and they are really motivated to evolve, to wrap their arms around this outgrowing, nimble, almost irregular army. With APTA is like classic army, and your special forces here. Where are we going? Where are the opportunities? What should we be thinking about?
I think from what I see, I think that our profession, I think part of it will still be the same. You're going to have high volume, corporately owned private practices that are doing a lot of volume. You're going to have a lot of hospital clinics that don't change. You're going to see,
and they shouldn't. The hospital clinic is probably the hospital clinic.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going to be there, and it's going to be just as busy as ever. I think what you're going to see in our field and in our specializations is you're going to see these clinics where there's going to be, I think, many, many more small clinics that specialize in very, very specific niches. It's already happening. We're seeing that happen right now. And what a great thing for the consumer, right? Like you used to have to go to a generalist, hope you talk to a physical therapist that knows something about running. And now you're going to be able to like literally find a clinic that just, they work with runners and they're badass at working with runners. Right.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
And even as you're like, I'm a female runner. Awesome. We only work with female runners. Like it's going to be even more niche specific, and that's great for the consumer. But I think what's going to continue to happen is what we're seeing right now, where we're able to layer in technology to help create better outcomes from a distance as well. So, the remote side of things, what you guys are doing with the Stretch system is a perfect example of that, right? Where you're helping people in this remote program where we're not necessarily like you're getting coached like one-to-one, but you're able to be a part of a group, a community, and do something remotely and be held accountable with different habits you're developing. And it's insanely effective, right? It works really well. And I think for our profession, we're going to see the same thing with people doing remote coaching. We're going to see the same thing with people that are able to manage, clients from all over the world, which we're already, trending that direction. And we're going to see a lot more clinics like this that are frankly bigger, more established businesses, more higher enterprise value. It is a great place to be. In fact, to me, like sometimes I look like we sold our clinic because we wanted to focus on PT biz, but it's a fantastic business. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, why did we ever do this? Because it's such a great business to own long-term that is cash flow positive. It's resistant to all kinds of economic changes, and you're meaningfully helping people in your community in a really cool way. Right. And like, so I see more and more of those are developing. And for God's sakes, like there were 2 of us 10 years ago, and now there's like probably 6,000 clinics like this. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon, because until the arbitrage of you get paid like shit for high student loans changes, which I don't see happening anytime soon, you're going to have clinicians that are going to continue to trend this direction because it's financially a better opportunity for their family, and they get to focus on athletes that they really, really love. I just think it's going to continue to grow significantly. And I hope to be there to help them do that. Honestly, it's something that we enjoy doing. I don't get tired of it. It's cool work with cool people, and it's constantly challenging and changes, and it allows us to focus on problems like, I didn't even know AI was a thing a couple of years ago, and now we started a freaking AI company. Like, this is crazy, and it's a fun ride to be on. That I just hope to be a part of as it continues to grow, because it's probably going to do so with or without us anyway.
Watch this. I'm going to just demonstrate elite leadership right now. Juliet, get on that AI thing.
Oh yeah.
Lisa, get on that AI thing. I'm going to be
Danny,
over here stretching.
It's so fun to chat you up. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people learn more about what you're doing at PT Biz online? Where's the best place to get to know more about Dr. Danny Matta?
Yeah, so they can go to physicaltherapybiz.com. On Instagram, it's just Danny Matta PT. If they're interested in taking a look at the AI tool we have, it's meetclaire.ai. And Claire, by the way, is the name of our first office manager, who is, she's awesome. She has lived multiple lives. She was a courtroom stenographer. She sold burritos at Grateful Dead concerts. She worked on a blueberry farm in Maine. She was a CrossFit coach when we hired her, and she's still at our office. Like, she still works there 10 years later. And when we wanted to like create this, I asked her, I was like, hey, can I name this after you? Cause like, I think you're awesome and I think this would be awesome. So that's why it's named what it is. It's meetclaire.ai. If they want to check that out. We're really excited about that. And yeah, I think, I just really appreciate the opportunity. It's just fun. It's fun to be able to talk to people that I know well and I respect so much as well. And, I hope that people found some value out of what we talked about. And if you're clinicians, I think you've got a bright future in front of you. It's like I don't know. I feel like people have been down on PT for a long time, and I'm not at all. I think it is fantastic, and it's growing like a weed, and we have such a cool opportunity to help people. So hopefully, if anything, I hope people change their mind about the profession and where it's going.
And just plug for PT Biz. Kelly and I have been lucky enough to go to several of your events, and hope to get to go to more in the future. And I'm not even a PT, and it is just a solid group of people who are inspiring and excited. And it's something cool to be a part of. So, if there's any clinicians out there listening to this and maybe not feeling excited or turned on by their profession, definitely check it out. It's really a cool organization.
And I just want to leave you with an image of Danny and I eating gelato in Milan less than a year ago, throwing a Frisbee in the only public park we could find.
Yeah.
And just being stink-eyed by the people being like, who are these Americans throwing the Frisbee, chugging gelato?
Yeah, then we ate
espresso.
Dumplings. like literally dim sum dumplings.
We couldn't do another.
You guys said
we couldn't do another schnitzel again, right?
Oh, those dumplings are fire. I'll be honest with you. They were some of the better dumplings I've ever had. It was really good. No, that was cool. It's fun to be able to travel and do stuff like that with you. That was a fun trip. I feel like we'll leave it at this. Like, we have taught together a number of times. I've taught a lot of things, and it was so fun for me to be literally your gopher and assistant, to be like, you want a coffee? Like, you need some water? Like, you want me to sign everybody in? Like, it was so awesome for me to literally just have this super simple, helpful job, make your life easier, because I know how hard it is to teach those courses, and to get to experience a new place with a friend that there was such just a fun environment, and to be a part of seeing all these coaches be able to change their thought process on things from, what was it, like 7 different countries showed up. It was crazy. It was such a cool thing.
We saw that Italian high jumper. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just bananas. One of our key central tenets of success is doing dope shit with dope people. And Lisa's just rolling her eyes. And Danny, it is so fun to continue on this journey with you. We are so impressed by what you and your family have developed, and really just everyone, it is my go-to when I need to find someone I can trust, which is half the battle. Reach out to PT Biz.
Sweet. I appreciate it, y'all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, Danny.